Who was Chulainn in Celtic Mythology Part 4? In ancient times, wealth was measured in different ways than today, and one way was by owning herds and bulls. It is for this reason that a particularly fierce conflict was fought. The Tombo Cooley, also known as the cattle raid of Cooley, there was a particularly fertile stud who was once a man, named Don Cooley, and Queen Maeve of Connacht and King Ulster wanted to possess it so that their riches were equal. The problem was, this bull was owned by an Ulster man, and he did not want to give it up to her. So, Maeve and Ulster resolved to steal the bull from Ulster, and they raised an army to do so. Now, the men of Ulster were suffering from a curse at that time, beset upon them by the goddess Macha, after they had offended and slighted her, and none were in any shape to fight another army, all except Chulainn. When the armies of Connacht marched upon Ulster lands, the bull was warned by the Morrigan in crow form of the coming army, and it prepared. He then gored the first herdsman that tried to capture him, and trampled about 50 others before escaping off into the countryside. Chulainn was determined to defend Ulster and stopped the Connacht army from advancing further, and he met them at a ford at Sleaffoy and invoked the right of single combat. Queen Maeve and King Ulster began sending warriors against Chulainn, and he began one of the most epic and dramatic standoffs in human history. One after another, after another, after another, hundreds of warriors were defeated by Chulainn. The ground ran red with blood and gore. Chulainn was sometimes wounded, and he was healed and tended to by his trusted charioteer, Leg, who stuck by his side as Chulainn defeats champions every day for months, effectively halting Queen Maeve's advance. But then it got more difficult for Chulainn. One day, he was approached by a beautiful woman who offered her love to him. Chulainn refused this advance and offended her. This woman was none other than the Morg, and he had angered a war goddess. Meanwhile, Queen Maeve was trying to get a formidable warrior named Loch MacMophemus, who had also trained under the legendary warrior Scathach, to challenge Chulainn, but he refused because he thought Chulainn was too much of a youth, because Chulainn could not grow a beard. So Maeve sent women to Chulainn, who urged him to make a false beard so he could fight the most skilled warriors of Connacht. And of course, Chulainn, who was a man driven by honor and challenge, made a false beard out of heath grass and berry juice, and created a quite convincing beard for his face so that Loch would fight him. The ploy worked, and Loch decided he would fight Chulainn. And a battle they did have. Loch was skilled and formidable and strong, and just as able a warrior as Chulainn. Many wounds did Chulainn sustain during this battle. And it was during this battle that the Morrigan decided to try to get her revenge. First, she came at Chulainn as a great black eel, and Chulainn was held and wrapped up in her form, and unable to defend himself for a moment. Loch drove his spear into Chulainn and ripped open his belly and mangled his entrails, giving Chulainn a grievous wound. Chulainn's pain was great, and the waters ran red with his blood. But someone watching the battle insulted him and taunted him as he lay in pain and dying. At this, Chulainn grew wrathful and broke one of his legs free of the eel and smashed it underneath his foot, breaking its ribs. At this, the eel released him and retreated. His battle continued against Loch, and Chulainn, holding his entrails, was able to match Locke and hold him off from inflicting further damage. As their battle continued, the cattle were stirred and began rampaging through the countryside and trampled 100 men to death. It was during this time that the Morrigan returned in the form of a great black wolf, and Chulainn was knocked down by the wolf, and it ripped and tore at him, pulling at his flesh, trying to devour him. But Chulainn managed to grab the wolf by the neck, and he shoved his fingers in its right eye socket and crushed the orb within, again sending the Morrigan as the wolf into retreat. Again, Locke came at him, and their battle continued again shortly before the Morrigan again tried to defeat him. This time, she came at him as a great red heifer, and as he saw her stampeding towards him, he jumped out of the way and cast a stone at her rear leg, shattering it, and this time she retreated without coming at him again. As Chulainn was rising to his feet after this, he was cleaved at the groin by Locke, and was caused great pain. Chulainn's anger rose so mighty that he brought the spear Gable into the stomach of Locke, and dealt a fatal blow to the man. Chulainn let the man fall forward into the water as he died, so that all knew he did not flee, as he died a warrior. Chulainn had vanquished a great foe, but he was greatly wounded, with his guts hanging out, his groin cleaved, and many other wounds besides. Leg brought him back to his camp and began mending him. Later, he was visited by his father, the god Lu, who told him he was his son, and mended Chulainn's wounds so that he could continue his battle as he single-handedly defended Ulster in Celtic mythology.